Did you know that Porsche has produced more than 1.2 million examples of the 911 since the model first appeared in 1963? That makes it one of the most successful sports cars ever built. But the really strange part is not how many Porsche sold. It is how recognizable the car remained across more than 6 decades of redesigns, new engines, racing victories, safety regulations, turbocharging, all-wheel drive, and now even hybrid technology. Place an early 911 beside a modern Carrera, and they clearly come from different worlds, yet almost anyone can see that they belong to the same family. Very few cars survive that long without either losing their identity or becoming a nostalgic decoration for wealthy collectors. The 911 did something much harder. It remained desirable, usable, and genuinely competitive. Today on VH Car, we are counting down 7 reasons the Porsche 911 may actually be worth every dollar. And that statement requires some explanation, because the current 911 Carrera starts well above $130,000 in the United States before you begin exploring Porsche's famous options list. That list is where a reasonable sports car purchase can suddenly acquire decorative stitching, upgraded wheels, painted keys, special leather, and a final price that makes you wonder whether the salesperson quietly added a small apartment. But the 911 is not valuable simply because it is expensive. Its real appeal comes from the unusual way it combines history, engineering, performance, daily usability, and long-term desirability. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, which generation of the 911 would you choose? Would you take a classic air-cooled model, a modern Carrera, a turbo, a GT3, or something more unusual? And be honest, would you keep the specification simple, or would you spend 40 minutes selecting the exact color of the seatbelts? Number 7 is continuity. The original car was presented in Frankfurt in September 1963 as the Porsche 901, intended to replace the 356. The name later changed to 911, but the core idea survived. A compact sports car with a flat-six engine mounted behind the rear axle, a distinctive roofline, round headlights, and enough practicality to function as something more than a weekend toy. Over the following decades, Porsche developed turbo models, cabriolets, Targas, all-wheel drive versions, lightweight specials, track-focused GT cars, and increasingly advanced Carreras without abandoning the basic identity. That continuity gives the 911 something most expensive cars cannot buy: immediate recognition. A modern luxury performance car may look dramatic for 5 years and strangely outdated after 10. The 911 evolves more carefully. The dimensions, lighting, bumpers, technology, and aerodynamics change. But the overall silhouette remains familiar. Owners are not simply buying the newest design trend. They are entering a lineage that has been refined for generations. This also helps explain why many older 911s remain desirable. The car's history is not divided into one famous version surrounded by forgotten replacements. Enthusiasts argue passionately about nearly every generation. Some prefer the simplicity of early air-cooled cars. Others admire the 993, the final air-cooled generation. Some defend the controversial 996 because it brought major modernization and now represents a more accessible entry point. Others want the speed and refinement of the 997, 991, or current 992. Porsche somehow created a model where almost every generation has its own loyal group ready to explain why everyone else is wrong. Number 6 is the flat-six engine and rear engine layout. The modern Carrera uses a twin-turbocharged 3.0-liter flat-six positioned at the rear of the car. Porsche's horizontally opposed engine design keeps the engine relatively low, helping reduce the center of gravity, while the rear placement gives the driven wheels strong traction during acceleration. The current Carrera produces 394 metric horsepower in international specification, while the US market lists the car at 388 horsepower. Porsche states a top speed of 183 miles per hour for the current US Carrera. Putting the engine behind the rear axle sounds like the kind of engineering decision that should have disappeared after one experimental prototype. Most manufacturers place engines closer to the center because concentrating weight between the axles generally makes the car easier to balance. Porsche instead spent decades improving the unusual layout until its weakness became part of its character. The rear weight helps the 911 accelerate with extraordinary confidence, while careful suspension tuning, wider rear tires, active chassis systems, aerodynamics, and electronic control make modern versions far more predictable than their ancestors. The result is a driving experience that feels different from a conventional front-engine sports car or a mid-engine exotic. The nose responds quickly, the rear feels heavily planted under power, and the car seems to rotate around the driver in a way that becomes more natural the longer you drive it. You do not need to explore dangerous speeds to notice the personality. Even an ordinary corner communicates that the engine is behind you and the front of the car is unusually light. Number 5 is that the 911 can deliver supercar performance without demanding supercar-level suffering every day. It has a usable cabin, excellent outward visibility by sports car standards, a front luggage compartment, 2 small rear seats in many versions, and enough comfort for long-distance travel. Those rear seats are not exactly an invitation for 4 adults to cross the United States together. Unless the adults in the back have no legs and very forgiving personalities, they are better treated as additional storage. But for children, bags, jackets, or occasional short trips, the space gives the 911 a level of flexibility that many exotic cars simply do not offer. The modern 911 also combines serious performance with technology designed for real conditions. Porsche has offered systems such as wet road detection, adaptive suspension, advanced driver assistance, and all-wheel drive on selected variants. The car can handle commuting, highways, mountain roads, rain, and track days without requiring the owner to keep a second vehicle nearby just in case the weather develops opinions. That practicality does not make the 911 ordinary. The seating position remains low. The steering is precise. The controls feel purposefully arranged, and the engine remains present in the experience. It simply means the driver does not have to choose between excitement and basic usability. Many performance cars are brilliant for 30 minutes and exhausting for the remainder of the day. The 911's talent is making the driver want to continue. Number 4 is the incredible variety within the 911 family. Porsche 911 no longer describes one car. It describes an entire range of personalities built around the same basic idea. There are rear-wheel drive Carreras, all-wheel drive Carrera 4 models, open-roof cabriolets, Targas, turbos, GT3s, limited heritage editions, lightweight models, and highly focused track machines. The newest Carrera GTS introduced another major step by becoming the first road-legal 911 to use Porsche's lightweight T-hybrid performance system. It combines a newly developed 3.6-liter engine with electrified turbocharging and an integrated electric motor. Porsche says the Carrera GTS Coupe can reach 60 miles per hour in 2.9 seconds and continue to a top track speed of 194 miles per hour. So yes, the 911 has now entered the hybrid era, but in typical Porsche fashion, the electricity is being used primarily to make the car faster rather than to help you feel morally superior in the supermarket parking lot. This variety is one reason the 911 remains relevant. A buyer can choose a relatively restrained Carrera for road use, an all-weather Carrera 4, a luxurious turbo, a manual Carrera T, or a track-focused GT3. The basic shape stays familiar, but the driving experiences can be dramatically different. We still have 3 reasons left, and these may be the most important. We need to talk about Porsche's obsessive engineering, the 911's Motorsport connection, and the reason owners can spend an unreasonable amount of money on one yet still argue that it was financially sensible. Because a Porsche 911 does something few expensive cars manage. It can make the price feel painful at the dealership and strangely logical once the road begins to curve. Number 3 is Porsche's almost unreasonable commitment to engineering detail. The 911 is not expensive merely because of the badge on the hood. Porsche continuously develops the suspension geometry, braking systems, steering response, aerodynamics, cooling, transmission calibration, and structural rigidity without destroying the basic personality of the car. Even small changes between generations can involve years of testing. That obsessive approach explains why a modern 911 can feel comfortable on an interstate, stable at extremely high speeds, and responsive on a narrow mountain road. It behaves like several different cars without becoming confusing. Of course, Porsche will also charge you extra for features you assumed were already included. Apparently, engineering perfection and reasonably priced options were never designed in the same department. Number 2 is the 911's relationship with motorsport. Porsche did not build a road car, create a racing version for marketing, and hope nobody noticed the difference. Competition has shaped the 911 throughout its history. Different versions have competed in endurance racing, rallying, touring car events, and countless professional and amateur championships. The 911 has achieved major victories at events such as Daytona, Sebring, the Nürburgring, and Le Mans, helping Porsche develop one of the strongest racing reputations in automotive history. That racing influence appears in road cars through better brakes, lighter materials, improved aerodynamics, stronger cooling systems, faster transmissions, and increasingly sophisticated chassis control. Models such as the GT3 and GT3 RS make the connection especially obvious, but even the standard Carrera benefits from decades of development under demanding conditions. You may never take your 911 onto a track, but part of the engineering beneath you was shaped by people who absolutely did. And number 1 is long-term desirability. Most expensive performance cars lose value quickly because newer models make them feel outdated. The Porsche 911 often behaves differently. Not every version becomes collectible, and buying one does not guarantee profit, but demand for well-maintained examples tends to remain strong. Certain manual transmission cars, GT models, limited editions, and unusual specifications can become especially desirable. The reason is simple. The 911 rarely becomes irrelevant. An older model may be slower than the newest version, but it still offers recognizable design, engaging steering, a distinctive engine layout, and a driving experience that newer technology cannot completely replace. Each generation develops its own personality instead of becoming merely an inferior version of what came next. That resale strength changes the real cost of ownership. A 911 may require more money upfront than many rivals, but retaining a larger percentage of its value can reduce the financial damage when it is eventually sold. That does not make it cheap. It simply makes it easier to defend during a conversation with someone who has seen the purchase price and is now questioning your judgment. So, is the Porsche 911 worth every dollar? For someone who only needs transportation, absolutely not. A reliable sedan will reach the same destination with more cargo space and considerably less financial drama. But people do not buy a 911 because they need transportation. They buy it because it combines history, engineering, performance, usability, and emotional appeal in a way very few cars can match. It can be driven every day, taken across the country, enjoyed on a closed track, and kept long enough to become part of a family's history. It feels special without becoming completely impractical, modern without abandoning its origins, and extremely fast without relying only on dramatic numbers. Now tell us in the comments, which Porsche 911 would you choose if money were not a problem? Would it be a Carrera, Turbo, GT3, Targa, or a classic air-cooled model? Subscribe to VHCar for more automotive countdowns, engineering stories, ownership breakdowns, and honest explanations of why certain cars cost so much, and why some of them may actually deserve it.